We will come into a future where AI is doing a lot of the work, especially if you think about with the technologies we just have today, just the ones we have. I'm not even talking about AI going to AGI. I'm just talking about the ones we have today. You could replace most of your cab drivers, Uber drivers, and a lot of the restaurant workers, and at least the front desk restaurant workers, cashiers, call centers, personnel. I mean, you're talking about destruction of millions and millions of jobs.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of WorkTech Weekly. I'm Steve Smith, Managing Director of Growth at RepCap. Today I'm joined by Sri Chellappa, CEO and co-founder of Engagedly. Engagedly is a people strategy platform focused on performance management, employee engagement, learning and development, and mentoring. One of the things Sri points out in this conversation is that most workplace technology has historically been built for desk workers, people sitting behind laptops in offices. But that group represents only a small portion of the global workforce. The majority of employees are working in factories, logistics operations, healthcare environments, and the skilled trades. In this conversation, Sri explains why those frontline workers have largely been left out of the HR tech stack, why many organizations are still managing performance engagement through disconnected systems, and how Engagedly is building new tools specifically designed for frontline environments. We also talk about how companies manage mixed workforces, the role AI could play in connecting fragmented systems, and why skilled trades and physical infrastructure work may be increasingly important in the years ahead. If you're interested in where the next wave of innovation in workplace technology might come from, this is a conversation worth paying attention to. Let's get started. Sri, welcome to the podcast. I'm glad to have you here. Sri Chellappa is the CEO and co-founder of Engagedly, and he is also my frequent lunchtime companion here in St. Louis. He is one of my fellow Gateway City denizens, and so great to have him here on the podcast, and we've got a lot of interesting things to talk about. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I should have worn my St. Louis hat, but I will next time.
See, I wore this just for you. It's totally not because I didn't take a shower today. This is completely just showing St. Louis pride, because I know that you're a big fan and supporter of the Gateway City. So glad to have you here. Glad that we can represent the 314 heading into the month of March. So, although I'm sure that people would love to hear us talk about St. Louis, hey, let's talk a little bit about WorkTech. Why don't you tell me about what Engagedly's doing now and what you're working on that's interesting? Because I think there's a few things that I know I'm interested in talking about.
Well, these are obviously very interesting times, right? But our mission stays the same. It's about building highly engaged organizations, because highly engaged organizations perform better, have lower levels of absenteeism. They perform the top quartile compared to the rest of the organizations that are not highly engaged. So that mission stays true. What we've done is expanded on what it means to include frontline workers, because even though they're about 60, 70% or more of the workforce, they're completely underrepresented in the tech stack. And as you're aware, many companies are trying to figure out how do we extend the technologies out to frontline workers. Now, obviously, on one hand, we have this massive AI, boom or doom or however you want to call it.
We could talk about both.
Yeah, I mean, it's boom if you are actually using it. It's doom if you're looking at the stock market. The fact is, the AI is moving so fast and tech is moving so fast, yet people haven't caught up to it nearly as much, especially the frontline workers. I mean, if you look at the current adoption of HR tech tools in the frontline, it is abysmally low. We are talking about people still using paper and pencil for, performance reviews or check-ins or huddles. Disciplinary actions are still done in paper. Data is dispersed across multiple ERP systems. Some of it is in Excel. A lot of those things are still very disconnected. And I think we see an opportunity there to bring that to the 21st century and then hopefully to the age of AI in the near future. So there's a lot of catching up to do. And Engagedly, we decided that's going to be one of our core focus for 2025 and 2026. And with that, one of the we haven't made a public announcement yet, but I guess you're the first one to hear it publicly. We are launching a version of Engagely. It's still Engagely, but version of Engagely called Engagely FX. So it's Engagely Frontline Experience. So the Engagely Frontline Experience is going to be a slice of Engagely plus other frontline tools that are not going to be applicable to people like you and I, because we are desk workers and they do things that are not, desk-related work. So they'll have some new tools as well as part of this. So it's a platform to connect the dots for frontline workers. And I think I'm very excited about that because it is going to be a category of one, because it is something we are building that doesn't exist today in the market at all.
Well, I'm kind of curious just because, and I feel, similarly about this, that, I think that unfortunately, for much of the history of HR tech, work tech, et cetera, deskless workers, frontline workforces have been completely left out. It's been a lot of the tools were built for, people like you and me who sit behind a desk, stare at a screen, and are, doing quote unquote white collar work. But, we're a small percentage of the workforce. And when you think about, like you said, the 60, 70% of the workforce that are frontline workers that have completely been left out, there's a lot of room for innovation and for growth. I'm kind of curious and one of the reasons I ask you this is like I've, had the privilege of knowing you for many years, got to know your organization. And I've always found that one thing that I thought you were particularly good at, what Engagely has been really good at, is when you identify a problem or an opportunity, you have the ability, and I've seen you do this many times, to spin up product to meet that need in an incredibly short period of time. And I've been, consistently blown away over time with your ability to do that in a way that a lot of companies can't. You're able to really kind of move fast. With that said, I'm kind of curious, as you're moving into responding to your customers and the conversations you're having, what are the things you're hearing that are resulting in, there's a product here and we need to get it into the field right now?
Yeah, so I'll talk specifically about Frontline here. So a lot of the organizations that are coming to us now at Engagely, broadly speaking, are what I would call mixed workforce organizations. They're companies that have 30 to 40% office workers, 60 to 70% desk workers, but they want to use one product. And these big ERP systems don't cut it. They're really good for administrative tasks, but they're not meant for fluid work that we are talking about on the field, fluid work, even on the desk level. So if you're looking at, doing, for example, let's just talk about simple performance reviews or check-ins every 6 months, or getting feedback from an employee. You need to do that for both these workers, both people like you and I who are sitting in the office, but also people who are working in the factory floor or field services who are out there fixing cables and wiring and things like that, and or installing HVAC or whatever that is, right? And the tools have to be similar, but not the same. They can't be the same. And that's the key here. So we need to adapt a performance review or a feedback process differently for frontline than it is for desk workers. It needs to be quick, easy. You go in and go out, because that is not their system of work. They're working with the hands and feet and in physical workspaces, right? You don't want to take time away from that. But at the same time, you don't want them to be doing it on paper and pencil either, or having them sit in a kiosk in line to fill in the performance review where they log into their specific and they wait 10 minutes to get to that. That's all wasted time. That's all ROI impact to the operations manager. So what we are building is building responsive versions of our app that can be used on the phone very quickly. That's one example of that. The other example is a lot of the performance of the field workers are different than our performance. Many of the performance we do and I'm not saying this is universally true, but what I've seen is either around competencies or high-level goals, values, things of this nature. Much of the performance that's done on the field is on the KPIs. How many widgets do you install in a day? What is your productivity? What's the quality of the work? And things of this nature. And those KPIs are not sitting in HR systems. They're sitting in either in Excel spreadsheets in some cases, or in ERP systems, or manufacturing systems, or whatever systems they are. Well, our challenge there is to uniquely connect the dots to pull that data in as a reference point. So the performance is tied directly to productivity metrics or quality metrics and things of this nature. That's just one example, but you can keep extrapolating that out, and there's many such examples of tools within we need to build. So it's not a small project. It's probably a full year worth of effort to build something that is going to be unique for Frontline, but still connect the dots to the back end.
Well, I think what's interesting is in some ways, you're talking specifically about performance. I think that when you are looking at like desk workers and, knowledge work, one of the things that is tricky about measuring performance is there's so much subjectivity to it. But then when you look at things like, look, if you are an HVAC installer and you have very specific KPIs and measurables that are all there, do you see that things are a little more black and white, cut and dry in deskless workforces or with frontline workers, or are there areas of ambiguity in there as well that you have to, calibrate when you're building solutions for those?
Relative to desk workers, I would say there is more metrics oriented, but there is going to be some qualitative measures as well. How well what was the feedback from the customer overall? Were you pleasant? Did you do the work and leave the space clean when you left and not just leave a bunch of drywall dust everywhere? So things like that, right? So there's going to be stuff like that. So there's aspects of customer feedback that probably needs to be taken into consideration as well. And we are discovering some of these use cases as we go, right? Because it is dependent on industry by industry. So we are currently focusing primarily on manufacturing and logistics to begin with some healthcare. But I think it's going to vary from industry as well. But, living the values, if you're a shift manager, how well are you treating your employees so that they don't quit? Because, finding these people is not easy, especially some of these skilled trades. So you want to make sure that you're also incorporating some of that managerial skill sets into the review process as well. There is some nuances, but overall, I think it's definitely more metrics oriented than what we've traditionally seen in desk performance reviews.
It's also kind of interesting about frontline workforces and deskless workforces now is when you think about some of the work that's involved, and certainly not all of it, but it's just like how much of it is becoming more interesting and more compelling because of, AI disintermediation. It's just like, great, AI might be able to do marketing or finance, but you know what? I don't think AI is very close to hanging drywall or installing a furnace. I just don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. I would feel pretty good about my job prospects if that's what I was doing for a living. So, I think that in some ways, there's some of these industries that I think are going to become a lot more interesting just from a talent acquisition standpoint. It's just like I know that especially younger people are looking for, hey, I was reading an article in the Wall Street Journal. They talked to a guy. He got laid off he was an SDR at a tech company, and he got into basically costing and estimating for insurance companies like out in the field, just like, and a lot of the things that were kind of driving him were there's just more longevity in this. It's not going to be AI anytime soon. So any of those conversations coming up when you're talking with your clients or did that factor into your decision making for, hey, well, there's opportunity here for growth?
Well, I don't think AI disintermediation was necessarily the factor. Obviously, it is definitely a headwind for the growth in desk workers, for sure. If anything, it's going to obviously create some headwinds there. But it was just generally speaking, frontline workers were underserved. And we just saw an opportunity for that. That being said, I think we also have a lot of these frontline workforce, especially some of these ones that we're talking about, like plumbing or electric and things like that. They are tightly controlled industries. People can't just walk in and get a job. It's not like an SDR where you can walk in and get a job. Even though they are what you would call, frontline, but they are skilled workers and you have to get certified. You have to go through an internship or apprenticeship and get licensed and things like that. So when you lose a worker like that, it's very hard to backfill very easily, So it is important for them to retain these people. And as they get better, they get really much more effective and faster and more productive. So you want to keep them in there. So that's So worker retention actually is a much bigger issue in some of these ones. Not every one of them, but in some of these frontline workspace. And that's where technology can help, because you want to identify where the problem is. Some of them may be upset because your cafeteria does not have fresh coffee. That's an issue. How will you find out? You're not going to find out if you are multi-location, right? And the best way to find out is using some kind of pulsing or a survey tool and listening tools, things of this nature, which are, if you actually go and look at the actual penetration of these tools across these industries, I would say it's probably not even close to 30, 40%, maybe even lower. I'm not sure. I don't have the exact data in front of me, but for the desk workers, I think it's probably closer to 90%, where you get asked, how do you feel about your manager, or how do you feel about your work or your location, and things like that. So there's a lot of opportunity, just low-hanging fruit. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit that can be done. I'm not even talking about AI at this point, although AI can help.
Yeah, and so like really being able to focus on that employee experience, it's just in terms of like, okay, so it could be something as simple as like, hey, the coffee here sucks. We want better coffee. But I mean, it could be, is there a career path for me? Can I work my way up into management? And it's just like a lot of those areas of talent management, those are low-hanging fruit. It's just like for companies that aren't really focusing on things like either employee recognition or career pathing or learning and development, and really, hey, great, you just started off as an apprentice. Now you've got all your licenses. Hey, do you want to work your way up into management? What's the career path there? And so the long tail of that and just the high cost of turnover seems like there's a ton of opportunity.
Yeah, and building succession plans, for these people, that's also something that's a lot of word of mouth and I know this person, but when you get to scale, can help over there as well. Building succession pools, being able to find backups, being able to identify people with the right skills, identifying adjacent skills, things of this nature, which are more around talent intelligence and, skill intelligence. Those tools all have a place in the frontline space. Very seldom used in today because it's just not there. But I think that's where we see the opportunity a lot.
Well, it's interesting too, because you have, when you think about the rise and the growth of industry vertical SaaS solutions, just even looking at like, HVAC and plumbing, you've got, companies like, Service Titan and SimPro and some of these companies that are, that have basically the operations component, but a lot of them don't have the talent component. And so it's just like, there are more industry-specific solutions that are out there, but they don't necessarily cover the things that you're focusing on. I think the other thing is that when you think about all of the various system integration points, to get the information that you need for talent systems, you're needing to plug in and integrate into a number of different databases. Do you see the integration problem as getting easier to solve these days? Because that's long been a pain point for business leaders, is how do you make all the systems talk to each other and then get the workforce analytics and the people analytics on the back end?
That is one place where AI is definitely helping. As these systems, whether it's Service Titan or Procore and these industry-specific vertical software solutions, become MCP ready, where I can just connect them and ask them, hey, give me the data on this employee's tickets that they've worked on with the last month. I should be able to get that, because then I can use that data from Service Titan or Procore or wherever it is, right, into my system, pull that into a performance process or a feedback process, or use that as a tool for recognition, things of this nature. I can do that. So integration is definitely one of those big use cases that AI is going to solve better. I'm already seeing that, with some of all the MCP connectors that we have with Cloud and Cloud Cowork. I've been personally using some of it as well.
So what's your take on that? I'm kind of curious.
I'm a little nervous because it does require you to give some of your passwords and usernames and things like that. So I've been a little holding myself back because I don't want it to come and start emailing people and sending you nasty grams, Steve. So
you're afraid your AI is going to start blackmailing you? It's like, Sri, I can't do that, Sri.
Not yet, but I don't know. I'm holding back, to be honest, because I want to understand the ramifications and see how to use it best. Because there's no impending use case that I need to solve for, right? I'm still fine if I need to send somebody a response manually. I'm happy to do that. Yeah.
You're happy doing your own emails.
Yeah, I'm happy doing my own emails and responding to text messages. Yes.
So, another thing I wanted to ask you about, Sri, and this is a little bit of a tangent, is I've always found you to be one of the more interesting people I get to talk to in work tech. Not the least of which is you're the only person in work tech who I know who has an IMDb page. So, and I highly encourage everyone to go check it. Well, we'll have a link in the show notes to Sri's IMDb page. So you made a movie with Florence Henderson and Pam Grier. How did that happen? Did you just wake up one day and you know what? I want to get some 70s icons and make a movie. And what was the name of the movie, Sri?
Well, it's called Bad Grandmas.
Bad Grandmas. Okay. Can we get a plot synopsis on this? Because I'm just curious.
Well, the plot synopsis is that you just don't cross grandmas.
Yeah, you just don't.
If you cross them, they become bad grandmas.
Right, and they will not send you a check for $12 on your birthday.
Or you might find your head in their freezer.
Okay, wow. Okay. Now, see, I can imagine Pam Grier going to a dark place like that, but Florence Henderson, that seems uncharacteristic. But I guess playing against type, that's, from a dramatic standpoint, I can see how that would work.
Yeah. No, I've been making movies off and on for a long time, and I made Bad Grandmas over 10 years ago at this point. So Engagely has pretty much taken up my life the last 10 years. I haven't done one in a while, so yeah.
Are you like, okay, that was a great phase of life, but now I'm all about workplace technology? Or is it just like at some point it's like, I don't know, maybe I'll dive back into it?
Yeah, I'm waiting for a call from Steven Spielberg. He hasn't called me yet.
We'll see what we can do.
I don't know. I might get back into it. I might not. I don't know. I'm just going to see what life fancies me, I think at this point I'm going to stay true to work tech for the next, few years. And I might get back into it. If I feel like burning some cash, I might do it because there's no money in it. So.
But it's a passion thing.
Yeah.
You're a very creative guy. You've got that, the recording studio in your building in scenic downtown Maplewood. And you're actually a musician yourself. So, you're a man of many talents.
Yeah. Thank you. I wish I had more time in life, but I think at this point, we'll just do what we have available. I'm not very good at any of those things, to be honest.
No, what it's about, it's not being necessarily good at it. It's just like, hey.
Yeah, I just enjoy doing it. It's a good side quest. I think every man should have a side quest. That's my perspective in life,
I totally agree with that. So, we live in interesting times, to say the least. When you're kind of looking at, our industry and looking at what's going on, what's something that makes you hopeful about the future?
I think our ability to innovate and keep trying is still pretty hopeful. I think there's a lot of energy among the people I work with and the people I see, and everybody wants to do good work. They want to really push the envelope in new ways of innovating. I think that's all positive, very positive. I wish I was more hopeful about our overall governance. And I say that not because of what's going on today necessarily, but I'd say that because, right? And that's going to cause societal chaos, and nobody's prepared for it. And the private companies that don't care, they just want to go and keep doing more and more with fewer and fewer people. If you listen to some of the comments from Andy Jassy from Amazon, they're talking about half, I don't know the exact number, but less than half as many people in a few years as they have today. That's several 100,000 people just from one company. And if Amazon is going to do that, Walmart's going to do that, Costco is going to do that, Target is going to do that. All these big retailers will eventually do that because they have to compete. So they will do that. Who is addressing the societal impact on that? And that's the thing that worries me, is because we don't have a backstop for these people, and the government is running out of cash. We are printing money out of thin air right now to fund our deficits. And I just don't see anybody really holistically thinking about it. And the current government is completely incapable of doing that.
Well, I think that what you're touching on is important, because I think that there is definitely a public policy aspect to this that needs to be considered. And I don't see it happening either when you think about, like you said, it's just like, great, if you're having all of these jobs potentially vanish, and when you think about, okay, so look at Amazon, what are they going to replace? Warehouse workers. you can get robots to do these, jobs that quite honestly are dangerous and do them much more efficiently. They can do them 24 hours a day, and they can do them, far safer than humans can in a lot of regards. So I can see that. But what about the argument that whenever we go through a societal change, there's always concerns that, it's going to decimate the workforce. And what happens is, jobs that were not imagined come into being, and it's a net positive. You go back to the Industrial Revolution, created more jobs. You go back to the beginning of the internet. It created a lot of new jobs that...
Yes, it will, but they will require new skills, and nobody's addressing that, right? So people have to be reskilled, right? Suddenly, let's say the new jobs being created are people who can fix robots. Maybe robots capable yet of fixing themselves, which thankfully, hopefully that's not the case, because if they start fixing themselves, we might be in trouble. But let's say there's a whole new class of jobs being created because of that, programming, monitoring these robots, building monitoring systems and actually operating them. So there are new jobs being created potentially, right? But those are new skills people have to learn and train. And I don't know if that's that easily done or not. So there are some, to your point, yes, new jobs will be created, absolutely. And we'll have that. But we'll also have a society of abundance. We'll have a lot of all the basic needs on Maslow's hierarchy taken care of. But that might lead to people not being able to take care of their own, the second part of the Maslow's hierarchy, where they feel like they have a purpose. And I think that, to me, the mental health problem is actually more than anything else that I'm also concerned about.
And I think that's something that is being completely overlooked, because it's just like, okay, great. Will AI take away jobs? Will it create new jobs? Do we need something like universal basic income, or do we not need that? But I think that the whole idea of a lot of people's sense of purpose comes from what it is they do. People want to have something that they feel that they're good at, whether it's just like, hey, you know what? I know how to go out and fix a car, or, hey, I know how to send a really great email campaign, or whatever it is. It's just like people want to feel like they have the ability to do something and do it well. And it doesn't seem like we're talking about that at all.
Yeah. And that's what I'm talking about, yeah. So we have, the other aspect is people are going to live longer, and I think there are some other challenges that might cause as well. So I don't know. If we are in very uncertain times, and I think the positive part is we've always figured it out historically, with our ancestors, we're a lot more resilient than we were, I feel like. But hopefully we are, and our future generations will be as resilient as well.
Well, I mean, it's interesting getting up in the morning to see, open up the web browser and see what's going on in the world until it's like, oh, wow, okay. But I don't know. I mean, it's just when you look at the job situation, it's just like, yeah, I mean, it's easy to feel like, oh, maybe a whole class of jobs could disappear. But, if past is prologue, in the past, there have been more in different jobs. It's just we have to, imagine what those are going to be and be willing to say, either us individually, okay, I'm willing to engage in my own personal development to be ready for the future. And I think that when I look at like young people today, I think that's going to be more true than it was, say, when we were starting out.
Yeah. Yeah, we are going through a transition period. Hopefully in a couple of years, we'll be on the other side of it. Where we have some clarity. I'm not sure we'll necessarily solve it, but at least we have some clarity.
So one more question for you, Sri, because I know that you're, and this is a bit of an unfair question, but I think it's one you'll kind of enjoy. If you were 22 years old again right now, and you knew all of the things that you know, what would you do in your career right now? If you were, you have the benefit of all this additional context. How would you get your career started?
I think at this point, if I were to go back in life and know what I would, and especially I also grew up in India, so it is an unfair question because my environment was India, which is different than the US. So if I was a high school kid in the US with what I know now, I would definitely get into skilled trades. Yeah. And not to actually just work, not like go and, be a plumber and be a master plumber the rest of my life or fix HVAC. I'll probably be in the electric field, actually, more like HVAC, electric, mechanical work. But to build business around it. Because I'm still an entrepreneur at heart. And I would like to use the juxtaposition of physical work and technology to build something interesting that can be accelerated by technology.
So would it be fair to say that that is one aspect of the workforce that isn't getting disintermediated by AI, that AI is not going to be able to replace that part? There's a business that you could build, even if it's supplemented by AI, AI is not going to
AI. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
it's not
I
going to be
just look
replacing
at
it.
I'm particularly interested by HVAC systems because I look at how much energy is wasted in this building and everywhere else I go, how much energy we waste in HVAC systems. I think there's disruption to be done. It hasn't been changed. It hasn't changed in decades. It's the same HVAC system that ran 20 years ago than we run today. There's a little bit more efficiency, maybe in your motors and cooling and things like that, but for the most part, it's the same system. There's some innovation that's missing. And it's because all the people who want to innovate are in software or in AI and not in HVAC, right? And that's or they go to finance and try to build these, where they can scrape pennies off the top in these, hedge funds and things like that. So,
Sri, I could have done a whole other hour. I think we were just getting rolling, but
thank you. Well, thanks for having me.
A lot of the conversation around AI focuses on productivity. What systems can automate, how many jobs might disappear, and how quickly companies can operate with fewer people. But Sri raises a different concern. Even if new jobs are created, they won't necessarily require the same skills as the jobs they replace. That creates a gap that technology alone can't solve. Workers will need to learn new capabilities. Companies will need to think more seriously about development and reskilling. And as Sri pointed out, there's also a deeper question about purpose. How people find meaning in the work they do as the nature of work itself starts to shift. Those are not simple problems, and they're not problems that software alone will fix. But they're going to shape how organizations think about talent, technology, and the workforce for years to come. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to WorkTech Weekly on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube Music. And I'll see you next time.